Hello, everyone. Darren here, and on today's episode of WotC Academy, we are going to talk about Final Stands. This is the first of a mini-series regarding the subject, and we have all been in this situation before where we were up against the odds at the end of a battle. And perhaps for most of you, you didn't know what to do. Well, did you know there is actually a bit of a science behind such an action-packed way to end the battle? Well, today, in this pilot episode, we are going to discuss the factors you should consider when making your final stand, whether it's by yourself or with some teammates, and then take a look at a couple of examples of what not to do. But don't worry, we'll take a look at a couple of examples of what you should do in a different video. So, let's get started. So to start, let me explain a couple factors that you should take into consideration when you are thrust into a final stand situation. The bullet points that I'm about to cover here are the main ones that you should take into consideration regardless of if you are by yourself, like the last one alive, or if you are with basically what's left of your team. The first three bullet points are the immediate questions or kind of like bounce off one another based on your answer for them. The first bullet point is the terrain. This is like where are you on the map and what is around you. The next bullet point is what tank are you in. These two coincide with the third bullet point of does the terrain suit the abilities of your tank. If the answer to that question is no, then the next question is, can you make it to somewhere where it is suitable for your tank? And again, if the question is no, then the final answer is to see the first bullet point and try and make use of the terrain around you. Moving down to the fourth bullet point, the next one is what is the health of your tank? Can you afford to potentially brawl or take shots, or are you a one-hit wonder? Fifth bullet point is how much ammo do you have left? Do you have the ability to put up a fight or face multiple enemies? And the last bullet point is what is the remaining composition of the enemy team? Who are your biggest threats? These are all the main factors that should be considered and have these decisions made as quickly as possible. Do note, though, that not every final stand will be the same, and some additional factors may need to be considered if you have teammates with you as well, and these would be factors like, what is your teammates' composition? Do you potentially have to take a shot for one of your teammates? How far away are your teammates, etc., etc.? It's just additional questions that you need to take into account in such a situation. But enough about all these factors. Let's take a look at some examples, starting with a perfect example of what not to do. So for this first example, I just got to remove the text box, and unfortunately I was not able to record this, but the pictures will do it justice. So we have 5 tanks, a Stritzwagen, or I think 2 Stritzwagens, the 9 and the 10, a VK-72, I think, an E-100, and a mouse. And they chose to have their final stand location be the beach. That's right. 3 super heavy tanks decided that their final stand location is going to be the beach, where there is very little cover. They didn't even decide to hide behind one of the landing craft. They just chose the beach. Yeah, this is a perfect example of what not to do. Because, as we can see from this image, they made it very easy for the enemy team to mop them up. If we look at it here from a different angle, we're going to just reinforce why it was not a good idea to use this. And it was a very clear, observation that they did not watch Star Wars Episode 3, where Obi-Wan is yelling at Anakin in the final battle of, it's over, Anakin, I have the high ground. And then Anakin does some, complaining, and then he loses. And that is because if you hold the high ground 95% of the time, you have the tactical strategic advantage and you will win. And, well, this is exactly what happened for the enemy team. They had the high ground, and it was basically like shooting fish in a barrel. and it really was not much of a final stand, but it was clear that's what they were trying to do, was make a final stand. Don't ever do this, please. Moving on to the next example of what not to do, we have a slightly better example, but unfortunately it just didn't work out due to one major issue, is that they were a bit spread out here. Now, right now, as we can see, it's not really much of a final stand. It's kind of more just a bad game right now. We can see the enemy team is getting whittled down. What we are about to see here, however, is another example of an okay attempt, but they were just unfortunately too spread out, and they were not thinking about their location much. They did a good job of, instead of trying to have some frantic breakout or anything like that, they kind of hold up their position in the town, and that kind of eliminated the arty threat somewhat. But they were too spread out. So spread out enough that I could not actually even get all of them in one frame. They did an okay job trying to cover as many angles as they can, but the more angles and avenues of approach you have to cover, the harder it is to defend. And we can see that here is that they're just too spread out, and the enemy team can get around them and get multiple angles and shots on them relatively easy. Whereas if they maybe decided to hole up in one road, or maybe in a location where the green team could only come at them from two different angles, then that would have been a much better decision. However, because they're spread out, they are able to be picked apart very quickly and easily, and it just did not work out well in their favor. So let's take a look now at one more example of what not to do. So we are back here on Overlord, and the focus is about to be the last 3 or 2 tanks, technically 2 tanks. We have a T-30 Waffenträger that's about to be eliminated, and a Sturmtiger. They do a much better job of choosing the location of where they want to make their final stand, which is the cliffs, but there's 2 things wrong. They're a little bit too spread out, and they are ignoring the avenues of approach. Waffenträger gets taken out. The T-30 is making the mistake of going and fighting right there on the corner, instead of just staying near his teammate and trying to bait the enemy team around the corner, so that way he can get shots on them instead of rolling up in front of them and allowing them to use the safety of the ramp to go hold down and shoot down on them. So he's not making that easy for him, and he's far enough out that he can get shot in the rear by the team that is coming in behind him. The Sturmtiger does a decent job of using the rocks right there and staying close to the cliff, but he is ignoring the fact that there's a ramp behind him. And it's only lucky that the green medium tank above him does not come down and just rush right behind him and start shooting him in the rear, because he would not have been able to do anything about it. This is another example of you're thinking you got the right idea, but you're not doing it right. That's going to do it for today's video. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, hit that thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this one, or you want to see more of this series, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, this has been Darren of WotC Academy.